Snaking its way through the countryside of Southern Virginia, this beautiful 3.2-mile strip of asphalt has been around since 1957. But now, for the second time in 3 years, the Virginia International Raceway is home to the SCCA National Championship Runoffs.
One of the most glorious racing venues in all of North America welcomes you to the SCCA Runoffs in its 59th running. The broadcast today presented by Mazda. We are at VIR, and I'll tell you what, this is a track that right now is pretty much a wash, and it's going to stay that way certainly for the next few days from what we understand. So a challenging runoff's coming your way, and this one is going to be a mega challenge because by far and away the most powerful cars here with not a lot of aero, not a lot of stick, are going to be out trying to negotiate this 3.27-mile ribbon here at VIRginia International Raceway. I'm Greg Creamer, joined alongside by Tom O'Gorman, Haywood Wagner down in the pits for us, and that shot right there kind of tells the story. It is wet here, Tom.
It really is, Greg. Great to be with you, and I agree. I can't think of less suited cars for these conditions that we're about to watch here in GT-1, which is going to make it extra fun. A couple of cool storylines throughout this class. Although a smaller grid this year, it's definitely going to be a burner.
Absolutely. A small grid, as you said, 8 cars will be on the line, but some awfully good talent certainly mixed in here. Tons of experience as well as some younger guns. And, you know, you take a look at it. The guy on pole, David Pintaric, won the gold in this category in 2017 when he also started from the pole, which he will do today. The guy starting alongside him, 13 gold medals total in runoffs competition, 6 in GT1 alone. So that front row absolutely topped up on experience.
It really is, but Michael Lewis there that you just referenced didn't have the smoothest week. It wasn't until the last day of qualifying here that they had ended up swapping the motor. He had been down about 15 miles an hour down this back straightaway, and when I say 15, that's 165 to everyone else's 180 miles per hour, and that's a big hill to climb. They swapped that engine, got the car back up and out for that last day of qualifying, and it's only 2/10 between the first and second place cars on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, in these conditions, maybe not having that power might not have been the worst thing in the world because when you don't have that kind of power, it's a little less likely that you're just going to spin things up here. But the story, of course, is these conditions. As we take a look at some of the cars in the field, there's a look at Ryan McManus's Chevrolet Corvette, the bright orange machine down in the pre-grid, but we're talking monster horsepower. I mean, some of these cars approach 900 horsepower here, and as you can see, not a lot of aero. That, you know, there's that wing at the back, a splitter at the front, and they also, even though those tires look like they're monstrous, not enough.
Yeah, I got to visit with Dave Pintaric for a little bit yesterday, and he was showing me the bodywork fully off the car, just kind of the systems they have in place. And he said, first of all, everyone thinks they don't make a lot of downforce. This car makes a ton of downforce for Dave Pintaric there on the pole. But the most interesting car in the field for today in this story is going to be the car on camera right there, the number 16 fall line Mercedes-AMG GT3. That's a factory-built race car from Mercedes that is reclassed here in SCCA into the class GT1. That car has a lot more technology as far as driver aids go, electronic systems, and the story from last year actually was Tom Herb, the driver of this car, came for a pit stop on surprise wet conditions, changed to wet tires, and ended up winning that race as the only driver on wet tires. He's starting this race. That was actually a GT2 car he was driving, so now he's here in GT1. Exactly. That's going to be really fun to watch. Maybe a little bit different modern tech car against these bigger sledgehammers.
Well, what's going to be really interesting when you think about it, you know, what he did last year. Porsches are always notoriously good in the wet because they got the weight right over the drive tires. So you brake, you get a turn, you go to throttle, and it just goes. And they work really, really well. That GT3 version of the Mercedes front engine, so it doesn't have that, but it's got a lot of aero and a lot of downforce on that car. And if he can get to speed, I would think that would help him up. But certainly, and I'm going to play the pun here, a lot of challengers for him, you know, in this race that are coming out, and a couple of them in these beautiful challengers.
Yeah, and they really dominated day one of qualifying. Adam Hinkle there in the background, his red Challenger was the pole sitter after day one. Alongside him was Adam Romito, the blue car we're looking at now, and those are silhouette cars, tube frame underneath. It's pretty much a metal beam that runs down the front and the back with a bodywork that's strapped over it, and they're much smaller than they actually look. If you take all the bodywork off, there's not much to these cars, but the big Challenger body, very much kind of that sledgehammer-looking car. And then we get up to that front row. There's Michael Lewis, who, again, didn't have the smoothest start to this event, but has now put himself within really, really good striking distance. And great to see him on the grid, because these drivers do sometimes pick and choose for the consequences of these conditions. Do I really want to drive this big of a car in this race? And in less consequential races, he may not be on the grid, but he is here today.
Yeah, and obviously here is your pole-sitting car, the Mustang of David Pintaric, the Kreider Racing, Ave Motorsports, Goodyear. And when you're driving a GT1 car and Ave is mentioned anywhere in there, you know you've got power, which is great to have in the dry, but again, it could be a little problematic here. And you talk about Lewis, you know, obviously he's got so much experience over the years, and that's where having that rough start to the event, with everything he's done, you know, over the years, you know, he just, I'm sure, was just like, all right, we'll figure it out. Let's just, you know, let's just keep plugging. Did it, front row.
Yep, and that's the experience showing. But as you can see, the rain is actually let up here just a little bit at VIR. The wind is picking up, and that's something that can affect these aerodynamic cars, especially if you get a headwind or a tailwind down that long back straight. We're taking a look down now. But the active rain is fairly light right now, but it seems to always pick right back up when we wave that green flag.
Yeah, amazing how that works, isn't it? And, you know, the other part of it is if you happen to have, like, up and over the horizon 14 and dropping, and you get a big side gust of wind, it can unsettle things as well. So very tricky place, and of course a lot of the stories continuing to unfold down on the grid. Let's get down to the third member of our team, Haywood Wagner. Good morning.
Hey guys, we're down here taking a look at these GT1 cars. I want to compare two of the cars you guys have been talking about. The first one is Tom Harris right now with the Mercedes. Look at all that aero on the front of the car. Look at the size of the front splitter. This is a much more developed aero package on this car than you'll notice here on the Challenger. The Challenger, just the single blade splitter, I'm guessing it's about half as deep. In addition to that, if you look at the windshield of the Challenger, no wipers, no defrost. This car is a dry weather designed to be run race car. The Mercedes wipers still has the factory defrost in it. It has side windows. Tom's completely sealed up in that car. He's going to have better visibility, and he's going to be a lot more comfortable in this race than the rest of the cars on the grid.
And that, obviously, in these conditions, thank you, Hayward, is absolutely can be key. And all of that aero that we're talking about, but maybe even more importantly there than the aero, you know, through the slower, twistier bits where you're not up into that aero as much, the ABS and the traction control is going to be huge.
Yeah, those GT3 cars that we're talking about, the development in electronics and the way that it works with the driver is just something you can't really describe. You have to feel it, and it's not like a street traction control where it hinders the car and pulls it back into its limits. It actually controls the limit and keeps it there perfectly. So if Tom Herb has got the dials in that car literally switched to the right settings, that could be a very good package for him. Now, to kind of push back a little bit on that aerodynamic conversation, though, again, from Dave Pintaric sharing, yes, it's a much more aerodynamic package around this production-based chassis, but the rest of the cars with tube frame chassis have a lot more going on underneath than you may realize.
Yes.
Tunnels, things like that. So the GT1 Trans Am style cars are not necessarily not aerodynamic in themselves, but they definitely have a very different delivery in how they do it.
Yeah, certainly not devoid of it. And the other thing is that GT3 car, by rule, is, I think, regulated to around 550 horsepower. So you're giving up to some of these cars 400 horsepower. Yeah. So that's the other side of the coin. You just make your speed in very different places.
Definitely, and that's going to come into effect, especially with the long straightaways here at VIR. One of the trickier ones we're taking a look at now down into turn 1, and that braking zone has proven to be very challenging in the wet. If you end up on the left side, especially at that green flag, you may not have a choice. You just have to brake early.
Yeah, you have to, you know, just give it up a little bit, play the risk versus reward game just a little bit. You know, this track, you know, presents in like 3 different tracks in a way almost, and I've talked about it before. In the dry, you have to be very precise, because if you go off, there aren't traps to catch you in paved runoff, and it all slopes downhill. That just gets magnified in the wet. So just tiptoe precision around here, and trying to manage 800 horsepower. This is going to be a one heck of a show here.
You can already see the spray coming out from underneath those Challengers sitting on the second row. When we get to our track map, when you're talking about the 3 personalities, we kind of have the mechanical grip, the aero grip, and the power in sectors 1, 2, and 3, and that'll become very obvious. When you take a look at this track map, you got some lower speed corners in sector 1, really high speed corners in sector 2, and then sector 3, big long straightaway.
Yeah. But then finishes in a really twisty technical section as well. So it just keeps you on your toes. And that's the one thing. When you have a car like the Mercedes that is designed around massive aero, if in the wet, you would think, okay, that'd be great. But you have to have some measure of speed to have the aero be effective. And the other part of it is, when they build these cars designed with monstrous downforce, they don't always have great mechanical grip. Well, these GT1 cars, it's all mechanical for the most part. So it'll be interesting.
One of the points Dave made the other day, too, is a lot of these drivers will double dip between the Trans Am Pro Series and this club racing series between amateur and pro in the SCCA ranks. And those drivers, when they do race the pro races, they can't just pick to not race. They go out in the rain, they go out in the dry, they go out in whatever condition it is. And Dave said he's already run 2 of the Trans Am races this season in the wet. So he's already got some seat time this season in the wet in that Mustang on the front row, as do a couple of these other drivers who will double dip. As I mentioned with Michael Lewis, sometimes the amateur drivers, the club drivers, will just kind of weigh the risk reward. And at their regional weekend, if it rains, they may choose to not go out. So there's definitely an incentive to drive in the wet for some of the drivers, and that gives them an advantage coming into a race like this, where they've already seen this.
Yep, absolutely. And there you can see the grid going across the bottom of your screen. Pintaric and Lewis right there on the front row, and then those 2 challengers on the second row. Let's take a look at this track. Once again, 3.27 miles, 17 turns. There you see that first sector, and that is all technical.
It is, and a couple of notes: the turn 1 braking zone, very, very slippery on the normal driving line. Also, turns 4 and 4B, extremely slippery almost everywhere by nature of where cars drive there. So 4A, 4B are certainly a very stressful point on the lap here in the wet, then getting into those famous uphill S's.
Yeah, and there it is, just hang on for dear life in these conditions. It is spectacular. Up into Oak Tree, the most important turn, because you get that big launch down that long Madison Avenue back straight, and that's where the power is going to come in until you get to the roller coaster.
It is, and those first kind of 100 yards off of Oak Tree are super, super important here in the wet. You'll see drivers playing with different options through there, but the downhill run from roller coaster to hog pen, turns 14 through 17, have proven to be kind of the most challenging so far today, and as we said, the rain picking right back up.
Yeah, exactly. And that last turn, 17 hog pen, is so tricky, because as you enter into it, it's off camber, you're falling down into it, and it's not till you get right down to almost the bottom where you pick up, it flattens out just a little bit, and if you get you're off line a little bit early, you're off the track. And it's named hog pen because there literally used to be a hog pen in the farm that was out there originally. And if you go off there in these conditions, in these cars, you could end up in that hog pen. It's that treacherous.
Sure, and we just took a look at that spot on track a moment ago. You kind of see it's almost a waterfall down through the roller coaster, and it just puddles up right in the wrong place for these cars to have to deal with.
All right, well, here we go. They're starting to pair up. And as we said, only 8 cars in it, but a lot of talent up at the front for sure, and everywhere in this field. If you get here, you have had a good season of racing. And now, soon as the Mazda ducks into the pits, it'll be up to Pintaric to bring the field around. Now, this year they have a sort of an acceleration or a start zone, don't they?
Yeah, it's mostly for the restarts that there's a mark for them to reaccelerate, but coming to the green flag this time through, look at the visibility. The only guys that have the advantage right now, Lewis and Pintaric.
And we're watching for that green. You'll know it with these cars because the eruption of sound. We're green. And Lewis, he went right with it. And Pintaric spins. He got on the throttle a little bit too much, spun the rears up, and around he went.
So easy to do with 900 horsepower, but everybody does a great job to avoid him. Michael Lewis goes straight to the front, then Adam Romito in second, Tom Herb challenging for third. But right now it's Hinkle that has the spot, and this field is very much more spread out than we expected.
Yeah, and Hinkle hangs on to that spot as Herb just tucking in here, and Lewis up front and is absolutely tiptoeing around here right now. And here we go, almost literally floats a little wide at 3. Ooh, big wiggle by Hinkle.
And that's going to be a nice open door for Tom Herb to put the Mercedes up the inside, now into that slippery turn 4. Everybody now making it through. Pintaric on a charge, back up to 5th already in the background. That white American flag Mustang on a recovery charge.
Wow, what a recovery already, as you said. But look at Lewis, the gap that he has out front right now as they come by. Ooh, a car back end stepping around. Did he save it? Nope, he didn't. I see the yellow flying, and there it is. That was Pintaric once again.
Yeah, we saw the back step just enough that he's kind of bounced into those tires. No harm, no foul with the impact, it looks like. But the problem is he's on a downhill slope into the tires in wet grass. I don't think he's going to get out of there by himself.
Yeah, he's going to definitely, right there, you can see it. It just snapped around. And then you're in that wet grass. He did get into the tires, but you can see how I just pivoted around. But when this grass is wet, you literally accelerate. Look at this. He might be able to drive out on his own. That's a great recovery.
He might, and the problem is if they don't go full course, he's going to be very far away from the rest of the field. So he's saved us that caution, but in the end, he's actually put himself pretty far back from the rest of that group. And now what was a charge from 9th to 1st in the same corner sequence, now he's a half a lap behind.
And here comes Mike Lewis, and look at the lead he has built up already in that Jaguar XKR. I've seen that car at so many runoffs. That flame scheme on the side, he is just sort of a machine every once in a while. And he even earned a few gold medals back in the day in GT3. So he's driven lots of different things here.
Yeah, contesting GT3 and GT Light this weekend. This is the first of his 3 attempts at that championship. Now the battle for second getting pretty hot. Adam Romito with that Challenger, and then right behind Tom Herb in the Mercedes. Looks to just be kind of spectating at this point, checking out where is my spot actually going to show up as Romito then puts the foot down. We've seen a lot of hydroplaning down this front straightaway as well. You've got to be careful.
And there's the power. Romito just able to open it up just a little bit, but has to be so gentle on the throttle. But now Herb down to the inside using the ABS to absolute perfection. It gives you a lot of confidence. You can just stomp on it and go right to the apex, and he is through. Now the charge begins because it was 6 seconds already from Lewis to Romito. And that's the amount of time that Thomas Herb now has, 13 laps to try and make it up.
Yeah, big push there through NASCAR for Herb, kind of just discovering where the grip may be on or offline, but he's already checked out from Adam Romito, who's got a lot more of a handful, no driver aids in that bright blue Challenger, and there's still not another car in the background, just a peek at Jeff Hinkle in 4th.
Yeah, this is going to be fast. I mean, look at the margin that Herb has made up once he cleared him already. And he is, and once he gets up into the throttle, that car right there, up through these climbing S's, is going to be so much quicker than anybody else right here because of that aero.
Man, I'd say Herb is starting to catch Lewis. If
I think so.
If I have some math to prove me right at the next sector, it's sure enough almost a second quicker in just sector 1 alone for this Mercedes over Michael Lewis, as Dave Pintaric has had another issue, and the hood may be bowed a little bit on that car.
Yeah, that may have come from that contact over going through the snake. I wonder if he's got something going on with the throttle where it's just it's like an on-off switch, and he just can't feather it at all. Let's see what happens. That's down through hog pen. Looks pretty good there. Now this is where it spun on him before. When it goes to throttle, there it goes.
Wow. Yeah, just almost no time to even react to it. And that car, again, as you mentioned, these cars closing in on 900 horsepower. And if you don't have the ability to control how much power is actually getting to the ground, I mean, 900 horsepower is great. But if you're getting all of it all at once, then it's definitely not going to be friendly to the driver, as Pintaric is definitely pulling his hair out in that car. I have to imagine at some point he's just going to say, okay, I'm going to roll around for a little bit and find that grip.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see here. I'm really fascinated to see what this time was, because it was 6.5 seconds last time by from Lewis. Here comes Thomas Herb up into the second spot now, but the key is what's the margin? Lewis has gone through. Here comes Herb, and the margin. It's going to take a little bit for timing to cycle here, but he's definitely making up ground. I mean, there is no way. Yeah, it's down in 2. He made up 2 seconds in that one lap alone.
Yeah, 4.2 last time across the board, and the fastest car in all of the first 2 sectors was Thomas Herb. Michael Lewis was quickest in the 3rd sector, so they're kind of trading blows, and this is critical timing for this race, because whoever picks up the speed the fastest obviously will kind of gain that advantage, but the risk versus reward is huge, and this Mercedes is looking very good in sector 1.
Well, the one place where Lewis will have a sector advantage is in 3, because that's most of that back straight where all that power he's got is going to come into play. The rest of this this track is really the province of that Mercedes right now.
And let's not forget what happened last year in this class. It rained on these guys as a surprise, and Thomas Herb was the only one running an outclassed car that took the gamble. I'm going to put some rain tires on it, and he won his national championship because of it. This year, he's brought better equipment, but it's very similar circumstances, and it's paying off yet again.
Yep, and I mean, he has the right car for these conditions in this class. There's absolutely no question about it. And this is fascinating because, as we were talking about, these two cars are going to make their speed in very different spots on this track. And Lewis is going to have a mirror full of white and red nose Mercedes.
Yeah, and if Herb is able to get around Lewis, then Lewis can respond and see, oh, he's driving here. Oh, he's doing that there. Okay, I'm going to try a couple of new things. And aside from maybe what the driver aids gift that Mercedes the ability to do, for example, brake really late down into these corners that Lewis may not be able to, all of a sudden the chaser becomes the follower and learns a lot.
Absolutely, and there you can see that gap growing just through the horsepower of that Jaguar down that Madison Avenue back straight now into the technical sections, 14, 15, 16, and then right here, this is 16, that little flick left, and then you've got to be patient here, got to be very patient as you go in. Look at Michael, he went too wide.
Oh, going for the rain line, dips the front tires off, and Herb, smart to be patient, but that was a great opportunity. He could have maybe gotten something done. Oh, the hydroplaning from the back of the Jag. Look at it just shimmy as he tries to get the power down.
Yeah, this is, this is the classic study of when the monster power is not your friend. And that's what they're doing with, I mean, there's no better guy to be driving that than other than Michael, but look at Herb just close up again.
And that braking zone is critical in this race for the Mercedes. He's going to make up that many car lengths every single lap, but you're right, Lewis probably knows this Jag inside and out. And a little run side by side, doesn't get there.
Yeah, it's very tricky. You've got to be up alongside if you're going to make passes up in this section of track. We've seen it done already. Herb thinking about it here, looks to the inside. No, not quite close enough as they head into turn 4. And now, right here at the exit of 5 is when you start just feeding it some throttle. Oh, Hinkle having an off from 3rd. Driver out of Tumble, Texas.
That looks to be down in turn 1. Maybe tried the braking zone. And now he's going to go around. Looks like the 07 of Ryan McManus slipped through up onto the podium now for the 07 Corvette. But right now, Herb is running a very, very patient, if not cautious race is how I would define that. He's kind of watching everyone make the mistakes and taking his time getting through this. But right now, he's got to know that he's got the upper hand a bit on Lewis. He's just got to wait for that opportunity.
Well, the fact that in 2 laps he made up 6 seconds, I think he knows full well, I've got the car. I just have to wait here. And I can follow for a little bit. If Michael makes a mistake, makes it easy for me, great. As we get down into those last 4 or 5 laps or so, all right, then I'll make my move. And you can see he got out of Oak Tree incredibly well. I think he may have already, he may have cleared Lewis just because he could put the power down. He did. Now, though, does Lewis, when that thing comes up on the pipe at 800 horse, he's still losing ground.
He is. Something may be mechanically wrong with the Jaguar that has now dropped to second. Michael Lewis significantly off pace down the back straightaway. Take a look at trap speeds and see if there's any difference. Yeah, only hit 110 miles per hour. That is not right for a GT1 car. Lewis has got some issues.
Yeah, I mean, Herb in the GT3 car went 148. So, yeah, something's amiss there. And unless Lewis at that point said, I'm just going to let him go, get the visibility here. This, Lewis is smart. He knows a well-driven GT3 car in these conditions, it's their day. And don't do anything to risk one of these beautiful GT1 cars maybe and take that silver medal if you can.
It is very possible. Looking towards the back real quick, Dave Pintaric, who started off the race a little rocky, did set basically the fastest lap of the race last time through. So he's gotten the grips on the 57 car and is still on the lead lap. But now we're taking a look at who has inherited 3rd.
Yeah, Ryan McManus in that beautiful Chevrolet Corvette. Saw him on the pre-grid. And Ryan doing a really nice job just keeping it clean out there. He was 4th in 2016 in this class at Mid-Ohio. Oh, and Lewis is off. Oh, there you go.
Trying to figure out where that is. That is turn 1, but he ended up way. Watch, the car's about to dive to driver's left, I think.
He's just locked up. Nothing there. Ooh, no, he's filling up that grill a little bit. Look at that. It's just absolutely crazy. And, I'm interested, though, because It sure looks to me like every race we've seen so far today, that outside line into one doesn't work. And you know, the people that are finding the grip are doing it inside.
Yeah.
And I'm just surprised that Michael kept trying to work that outside line. I know that would be your quote-unquote standard rain line, but it's clearly not working.
It is, and if you think about why a rain line develops, it's because of the way the car transfers energy into the pavement. It smooths everything out, and when you start to study the data and look at the G-forces, a car can develop, 1 to 2 G's static load through the corner, but it develops almost another G in braking. So the most force the car puts to the ground is actually in those braking zones, and that's why you have to move off of them, or else you end up going straight, as we've seen many drivers in many races do. It's not something you think about. You think about, okay, avoid the cornering line, the dry line, but you have to avoid the braking dry line as well.
That's a really good point. And a nice drive here by Stephen Wiles. Started last in the field. He's up into fourth in that Cadillac CTSV. Obviously just tiptoeing around. But this is one of those races where the best survivor here is the one that's going to take the silver. And I make that point because that GT3 car is designed for this. And
this is a race against the conditions and the track.
Exactly.
Not against the other drivers, as we see Hinkle now going for a move side by side into the upper S's. That is sketchy. Decides to back out of that one, I think, for a good choice. But the Challenger has been much faster in the straights than the Cadillac has been throughout this week. I think Hinkle just needs to be a little bit patient, as he is now.
Yep, through the corner called South Bend, which in the dry is, it's the spectacular finish to the incredible climbing S's. One of the trickiest corners, a little wide there by Wiles, but Hinkle, knowing if I stick my nose down in there, and look at that, Hinkle runs a little bit wide on the exit because he turned in early, and Wiles immediately gets the jump.
You can see they're on the line they want to be on, but they know they can't go. They're just sitting there at 10% throttle, waiting and waiting. There's that straight line speed from the Challenger. Some of the fastest trap speeds of the entire event all week so far come from Jeff Hinkle, and he easily motors past the Cadillac of Stephen Wiles.
I'm looking forward to seeing as Lewis has ducked into the pits. Forward to seeing those trap speeds for Wiles here. Yeah, I think Lewis has stopped, and I'm sure the concern might be at least that front grille maybe getting packed up.
I was wondering the exact same thing as now. The charge continues for Ryan McManus, moves up to second in GT1. Coming from, I believe, 6th on the grid. He's got to be, I don't even know if he's kept track of who's gone off where, but he may or may not even know that he's second place. But this is a fantastic drive for the 07 car. Again, against the conditions more than anything else, and he's winning that race. Almost better than anybody else except Thompson.
Yeah, he's really doing a solid job here. And, as we said, when you get into these conditions, every input you make has to be so smooth. And the problem is, and we keep harping on this, but with the power in these GT1 cars with no aids, you may be smooth, but when that engine kicks in, sometimes it just hits. And that was Pintaric's issue, I think, and certainly McManus and now Jeff Hinkle. Oh, a little wiggle there, but they're starting to really figure this out just a little bit. And we are working lap 6 of 15 right now. See what Hinkle's going to do here.
New fast lap for Dave Pintaric is now 6 seconds a lap faster than your leader was last time across the line. So that number 57 car is on a valiant charge back from the back of the pack. He currently runs 5th thanks to the retirements of Michael Lewis and Adam Romito, but he's only got about 15 seconds to make up to catch the next car on the track, which is basically this battle we're watching now between Stephen Wiles and Jeff Hinkle.
So what do you think could have been his issue early? Was it just no heat in the tires maybe, and now he's finally getting them to warm up a bit?
Yeah, it's very possible. The rain tires, as we've talked about in other races, they take the heat. They need the heat to work, just like a dry tire does. And if you see, these tires are huge. They're really big tires, and they're going to take a while to get up to temperature, even more so than some of the cars with the little tires. So it definitely could have been a combination of the car really just wants to go. It's a very touchy car, along with very cold and very big tires. It could have just been a little bit too much too early for Dave Pintaric on that first lap, and it didn't help that there were 3 of those mistakes compounded.
And we just got word that Lewis, in that beautiful Jaguar XKR, has gone behind the wall into the paddock, calling it a day.
big bummer. He started off so strong, and we were wondering if something happened with the car down this back straightaway, but then combine that with the off in turn 1, maybe some grass in the grill, and now all of a sudden Tom Herb in the uphill S's has a very, very comfortable lead.
Yeah, he's got that. Well, it's been a while since these come through, but it's a huge lead that he's built up. And that's nice because he can just sort of take it very, very carefully at this stage. But the other guys you talked about, Pintaric, trying to see, he's got a lot of ground to make up, but the chunks he's making it up, he could be in this for a medal yet.
It is, and we're only about halfway through this 15-lap race, working lap number 7. As there is Pintaric picking off 4th from Stephen Wiles.
Did you see that wiggle?
I puckered for him. Oh, man.
Yeah, that's 4th as he slices through and picks up that spot here. And just taking a look at the gaps here. The tough one for him right now is going to be catching Hinkle, who at this stage is some 20 or 18 seconds up the road. But the chunks of time he's making up here, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. A lot of race left.
There's a lot of race left. You can see he's really figured out where to place the car. Actually, I think Hinkle's only the next car on track, so that might have been, as timing is sequencing through, he's actually a lot closer than we thought, but there's a lot of grass in that grill. I hope the car is running all right.
Yeah, it looks like it's just packed up under the splitter and maybe not into the actual radiator and brake inlets at this stage. So, fingers crossed there. But, yeah, I mean, he is, what an eventful, 3 offs we counted on, and then this charge back. This is impressive. Yeah, there's Hinkle. So you're right. He's already made up a ton of ground.
Certainly more than offsets those mistakes as this drive that we're watching unfold here. He's still got, again, half race distance to make up some time. I think Hinkle and McManus are both within striking distance for Dave Pintaric if he continues to run this strong of a race. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to have what it takes to catch Thomas Herb without maybe some offsetting mistakes from Herb. And so far, he's just been picture perfect.
Yeah, he really has. Was patient in the early going, and when he realized, all right, I can make some moves, did it, got to the front, and has just sort of checked out a little bit here. So, but look at this. This is that battle for that final podium spot. There is the car of Hinkle, the challenger, and here comes flying is the Ford Mustang of Pintaric. Look how much he made up. That's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, you could see the visible difference as they come over the crest. The car moving at about 30 miles an hour faster was Pintaric in the trap than it was Hinkle. So now he's just got to be a little patient. And remember, that front straight is so treacherous. I hope he can find his way by without any more implications down that front straightaway, because this is where we've seen in this race and others that hydroplaning is seeming to come into effect more than any other spot on track.
Yeah, and you can see there's a fair amount of little standing water in those puddles, and you hit them just the right way, the wrong way, however you want to put it. Look at this. He's up alongside, but we know this outside line, well, he's already cleared Hinkle.
He's in the scary spot, though.
So
dry braking zone.
Yeah.
Gets it stopped.
Made it work. Made it work. So now up into the podium spots after 3 offs early, your pole sitter, David Pintaric, back in medal contention. Does he have enough left to be able to pick up a silver or maybe even a gold? We'll find out when we come back to VIR.
Focus, guys. We're in a race to the finish, okay?
Here's where the rubber meets the road.
These initiatives move the needle, like, at all?
Well, let's shift gears a minute.
We're really kind of at the apex here.
We need to put the pedal to the metal. We need to nail those hairpin turns, cross that finish line, and take that checkered flag. Woo!
Hit the track with the world's largest motorsports calendar, track day insurance, and more. Haggerty. Let's drive together.
Introducing the first ever Mazda CX-50.
The charge continues for David Pintaric as we are at the SCCA Runoffs here at Virginia International Raceway. Our broadcast today presented by Mazda. That is Jeff Hinkle, who a lap ago was in third. Now he sits in fourth to this guy. He's the pole sitter who had 3 early big moments, dropped way back in the field, has charged his way, Tom O'Gorman, up into third. And we're eyeing these lap times right now because he's been significantly quicker than anybody else on track. Can he get to a second spot? Can he get to this guy? Well, you just saw Pintaric going through the bottom of Hog Pen, and McManus going into turn 1, so that's the gap.
It's a front straight's worth of distance, and the crosshairs are targeted onto this bright orange C7 Corvette and Ryan McManus has just done a fantastic job of racing his race, keeping the car on the track and driving to the conditions. You saw the orange in the background just flash in front of David Pintaric. That's the ground he's got to make up. It's actually about 21 seconds on the timer, but Pintaric has been lapping over 10 seconds a lap faster as he just resets fast lap of the race that time by at a 2:21.5.
He is booking. And, obviously you're success behind the wheel of the car. When you're chasing and you've had an issue and you're back a ways, when you actually start to catch glimpses of the guy in front of you, especially with that bright orange car, that is a great carrot, isn't it?
It is, and literally having the rabbit to chase is certainly a help, but just being able to take the deep breath and reset is one of the hardest things you'll have to do. I have, in fact, on this track, made the mistake of going off in the rain and into the tire wall, and I had to calm myself down. The team had to calm me down and get me going again, and we ended up winning that race. So it's not undoable, and these conditions do equalize out those mistakes better than most do. But it's certainly the biggest challenge to mentally break yourself of having those mistakes. Remove that from your mind, focus on the task at hand, and so far Dave Pintaric has certainly done a great job of that.
Well, in certain aspects, one of the best tools a driver can have in his toolbox is a short memory.
Yes, that is true.
You just forget about that. Let's just go. And the one thing now that the oak tree is gone here, and that happened a long time ago. So but it was such an iconic part of this track. But you used to have it in these conditions, especially in the fall, what Dorsey Schrader used to call the oak fuzz. That the rain would knock out of the tree and it would just litter that part of the track. So you would have, even the wet line where you'd want to be running was just treacherous because of all the oak fuzz down on the track. This track used to present, still does, present some just amazing challenges.
Yeah, it's one of the least forgiving tracks that I know of in the country. It's just because if you see from where we're looking right now, all of the off-track surfaces go downhill and usually towards a tire wall of some kind. So, but in the meantime, as we talk about that, Thomas Herb has just put on a clinic for the second year in a row. We'll have to start calling him the Rain Man of GT1, or I need to know whatever idol he's got to make it rain on this class. But he's got a very successful, or a very strong 1 minute and 11 second lead over our figurative carrot here, the C7 Corvette of Ryan McManus.
Yeah, he's just absolutely checked out at this stage. But again, Pintaric running 9 seconds quicker than McManus on the last lap. We'll see. Look at the margin. It has come down in huge chunks, and we're only working lap 10 of 15, so there's 5.5 laps yet to go here. Yeah,
resetting the fast lap of the race yet again, knocked 2 seconds off his personal best. He's got to balance the risk reward. As long as the car is telling him it's got the grip and he's just driving to that, that's excellent. If he's challenging the grip and he's starting to push the car harder and harder and harder, you're taking big risks in a way that you could throw away all this progress. Right now, it looks super solid, so I think he's doing more of that first.
From your perspective, you've driven certainly a fair number of races in the rain. What do you do? Is there anything you do to try and improve your feel for where the grip is?
I think I try to ask questions of the entire width of the track. If I haven't driven all the way out against the grass, I don't know if there's more grip out there. So I try to drive every single width of the track that I can. And honestly, the most important lap of these races is typically the out lap, because that's where you can discover when the grip, or where the grip is, without any consequences. You're going 35 to 60 miles an hour. You get a little bit of forgiveness. So those out laps, these are some of the most important out laps of these drivers' lives today in these conditions. But Pintaric, again, the back straight, that car is very, very confident down the back straight at 140 some miles an hour in the wet. He's there.
Yeah, he made that up one lap. He has now caught And here's the move down to the inside. Is it going to stick? Yeah, Pintaric just drives through. Boy, I'll tell you, once he got that figured out, and I wonder if it was just a matter of needing to get heat in those tires, something, because now he's just, coming through the field like a knife through butter.
Yeah, it's really, really fun to watch as he's just confidently knifing through not only the track and the conditions, but the field itself. Resets another couple of personal best and session best sectors. Interestingly, though, on the dry line, I get nervous for anyone who's out there, but he seems to have figured out, no, it's totally fine now that there's some heat in those tires.
Yeah, and I think, what you need to do is you just brake a little sooner, gentler, so you don't lock up. And it looks like, there's that little rise right as you turn in, and he's turning right in front of that. I don't know whether maybe that's given that left front, the way he's driving it and the way he's braking, it just allows it to pivot into that corner a little bit, but it's certainly working. And Pintaric on that lap resets it again, 2 minutes 18.3 compared to a 2:26 for Thomas Herb. There's no way you're going to make up a minute plus here, but what a drive by Pintaric.
Yeah, he's got 4 laps to make up 1 minute. I don't think that's going to work out, but Thomas Herb is also just in that nice, comfortable cruise mode. He's not had any pressure for most of the race. He's got to have his rhythm down. Actually sets a new personal best sector 2 on this lap, so he's not pushing, but he's very comfortable at this point. I have to imagine, as Hayward mentioned, also windows up, wipers on. He's probably got the blower going on in that car. He's probably the most comfortable guy out there on top of it.
Might have a little XM radio playing.
Maybe.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right, and that fall line crew is on the radio, to him saying, yeah, Pintaric's flying right now, but he's making up a ton of time. You just keep lapping within yourself, you're good.
Or better yet, saying nothing at all. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great, man.
You're looking great.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Don't even mention that somebody's coming here.
They may be, though, because he just responded with a very, very strong lap time, picked up a couple seconds on his previous lap.
Yeah.
So the 16 car, he is working his way into traffic, though, as I think, was that Stephen Weiss just in front? It was, in the Cadillac.
Yeah, so...
sorry, Wiles.
Wiles, yeah, exactly. And he is, he has here, and we've got, you mentioned that Richard Grant. I don't know if he even came out for the start. I'm not sure on that, but Romito and Lewis now are basically back.
Did hear from Hayward on the pit lane that Michael Lewis retired the car ultimately because of visibility. He was having fogging problems, which he mentioned on the grid is a big deal for these proper race cars. They're not designed necessarily for the creature comforts you need in the wet.
Well, exactly, and I mean, some teams will take one of those, like a rear window defrost system, and will install it in the front to try and clear it, and all that sort of thing. But of course, that involves funding, and this is amateur racing technically, so we get it. But and the nice thing for Thomas Herb right now in that Mercedes-Benz AMG GT3 is he knows he's got a big lead. He can be patient, wait. Make the pass when it's comfortable for him. And if he gives up 2, 3, 4 seconds in doing that, he's fine.
Which we're seeing him do now down the back straightaway. Takes his time down to get around Stephen Wiles, or perhaps just gets outmotored as they now come into the braking zone for Sector 3, up over the roller coaster. And I imagine that Thomas Herb will make sure that he waits till the front straight maybe to knife through here.
Yeah, and with that ABS on that car, going into turn 1 is a lot more comfortable for him than anybody else out there right now, as we are working lap 12 of 15. Let's see what he does here. Gets it straightened out. Let's that TC kick in just a little bit, and there he goes.
See the difference in the aero between the two cars, how much higher the spray is coming off the back of that AMG GT3 car. And that's just because of how well the aero is designed to leave the back of that car versus the Cadillac, which, sure, it's got a wing, it's got the same sort of aero features on it, but not quite as efficient.
Yeah, that diffuser pumps out a lot of air at the back of those cars, and I mean that's by design. Their whole DNA is aero-based, and so they are really effective with all the driver aids, to be sure. Yeah, probably the only cars that make higher spray walls coming off the back are cars that run true tunnel ground effects, like some of the Atlantic cars and the like. They throw it up in the air, and of course now Formula One. Watching Formula One races in the rain this year has been hearkening back to some previous eras. It's been crazy. All right, completing lap 12 now for Thomas Herb, and here comes Pintaric in second spot. was kind of curious to see what he does for a lap time on this one. It was a 2:25.9 for Herb last time by. And a 2:19 for David Pintaric. So, as we said, it's what, 59.6 seconds difference with only now 3 laps to go. Not going to happen unless he gets some help from a mistake or something by Thomas Herb. And what we have seen, we've seen the dominating drive up front in this. We've seen the very savvy, smooth ride by Ryan McManus, starting a little deeper in the field and just staying clean, really showing some skills here. And then the remarkable recovery drive by David Pintaric. This has been a fascinating race in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's super compelling to watch driving in the rain. It's just so much fun to watch drivers adapt to it. 3 very different races on the podium, as you mentioned, but kind of surprised, as patient as Thomas Herb was last lap, to get by Stephen Wiles. We watched him almost painfully kind of wait to get to the front straight. His lap time was still within a second of his best lap of the entire race, so he's really turned up the wick in the last couple laps here, so to the point that when he does get held up in traffic, he almost didn't have to slow down on lap time.
Yeah, he just played it beautifully. And, that's one of the things you can do, isn't it? You don't have to catch the guy and then slow all the way down. When you realize you're going to be catching him, is you can back off just incrementally, keep your speed up, catch him where you want to catch him to be able to ease by. And, Thomas Herb really doing a nice job there. And, again, Fall Line, that is one top-tier team. They, compete in pro sports, pro racing as well. So they are feeding him just gobs of good information.
And lots of information available before this race as well. Perhaps a lot of kind of communication from different experienced drivers. Actually, in fact, we just saw the team owner, Mark Bowden, drive in these exact conditions today about 3 hours ago. He was probably giving every note he could think of to Thomas Herb through the window on grid to make sure he knew what he was doing. And that's what being a part of a good team really looks like. And whether it's Fall Line at the more pro level with the big paddock or the husband and wife who just have that communication nailed down, and they're in their open trailer with the little canopy over it. That happens across the board here in club racing.
Well, yeah, and that's what makes this, one of the things that just makes this event, club racing in general, but this event so compelling is, you've got the David versus Goliath stories here. There's no question about it. And in these conditions, a David can be awfully quick and impressive around here. If you don't have that big monster engine program, if you don't have this or that. Oh, Pintaric, who had been doing such a great job and had developed a sizable lead back to Ryan McManus. He's not getting out of this.
No, that's a lot of mud. And again, we talked about the braking zone on the dry line. We're going to see the tires turn. Nope, not even trying it.
Yeah, it just completely locked up. He went off with a ton of speed. And that stuff right now, that is some nasty muck.
Yeah,
that he is buried in.
And we've got about a lap and a half left in this race. I wonder if they'll just cover that spot with that local yellow. But that's going to move Ryan McManus back up into second.
Yeah, it's just an impressive drive, 6th to 2nd. And, you think about it, Ryan was 25th in the Hoosier Super Tour points. In 2016 in Mid-Ohio, he had his best finish in this class of 4th. But, he may well be one of those guys that, doesn't, have quite the power in that engine to go up against some of the guns. But as we said, rain's the great equalizer, and you drive smart, and you've got that the touch. Magical things can happen, and he's on his way to a potential silver medal here. That's pretty impressive. And, of course, Hinkle, that'll put that Dodge Challenger back up into 3rd.
It will, and that's been a roller coaster of a race for most of these drivers, really, but especially for drivers like Hinkle and Pintaric, who have come and gone from the race surface, come and gone from the podium itself a couple of times, and now he finds himself right there in that bright red Challenger, starting what will be his second to last lap, I believe, now with a bronze medal on his horizon.
Yeah, we've had a fair amount of churn in this one behind Herb at this point, as Hinkle working his way around and really, really careful through this section of track up through turn 3 and now up into left hook as our leader Thomas Herb in that beautiful Mercedes-Benz AMG GT3 comes through from Fall Line Motorsports, picks up the white flag.
Yeah, he picked up the white flag and put a lap on Hinkle that sits there just in the back of frame from that shot. So Hinkle also on his final lap for this race, but Thomas Herb has got about 2/3 of the lap to go to bring this one home.
Through the snake, now working his way up through the climbing S's. Here's South Bend. And now last time up and through Oak Tree. And you turn in, and then it kind of falls away a little bit right there, doesn't it? So that's what makes that such a tricky corner.
It falls away, but it also, there's not a lot of room to the tire wall there, and it's very easy to break uphill. There's no sight line to the apex. It's easy to just try to carry that momentum a little bit too much and end up in what is today very wet grass and mud. But keeping it nice and tidy, I have to imagine at this point, yes, he's about 3 seconds down on his best sector in this one. He's just bringing it home.
Yeah, don't slow down too much that you get out of your groove, but you can certainly not push it at all. Last time now down through the roller coaster. There's 14 into 15 right here. One of the most treacherous turns, you know, we've seen it happen many times. Last lap off of hog pen and a problem. So be really careful here. Get it turned, use that traction control. Still be a little gentle on the throttle. And here we go. Thomas Herb defending a national championship, coming from 5th on the grid and defending his national championship. The Rain Man, as he comes through once again, just an incredible drive. You know, yes, had the right bit of kit for these conditions, but didn't make one mistake.
Nope, just kept it nice and clean, patient to the point of almost overly cautious, and that is what brought him a gold medal. This will be 3rd place for Jeff Hinkle, completing his lap, just 1 lap down from Thomas Herb, but takes the checkered in that bright red Challenger, and that's a great finish for Jeff Hinkle.
It really is. You know, again, in these conditions, anytime you just bring it home, it's cool. And he will finish in the same spot he started. But as you said, there was, you know, he was, you know, back as far as probably 6th at one point and up in 2nd and all over the map. But this guy, he really impresses me. He has done a superb job, once again, coming from back in the 6th spot on the grid. And he, too, he has just driven absolutely within the conditions. I haven't seen him make any kind of a mistake. You know, the car really hasn't even stepped out that much. He's just driven a superb race. That is Ryan McManus.
And they call rain the great equalizer. To put that into perspective, Ryan McManus qualified about 6 seconds off the pole for David Pintaric. In the dry, 6 seconds is insurmountable. But in the wet, now we've seen where that goes. It turns into a podium because everything is brought back together.
Exactly. What a ride here as he comes through and will pick up that 2nd place finish. Still has to get through this last corner hog pen. That is never a given in the wet at this track. But there, he gets it turned, can unwind those front wheels just a little bit, gently roll onto the throttle. And Ryan McManus coming through in the Chevrolet Corvette for the McManus Agency, starting back in the 6th spot and brings it home and earns a silver medal. Just an absolutely great story. Now he gets to trundle around one more time. You almost wish you could just pull in the pits because you've just been hanging on for dear life. Your hands are cramping.
Guys, I'm tired, and I'm wet. That poor guy's wet in that car. Not unlike Thomas Herb, who's nice and dry.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And again, these conditions, you don't get near the physical load on your body, but the mental strain, the focus in these conditions, you get out of the car and you're just absolutely devastated mentally.
Yeah, it's one of the most challenging mental exercises you will have to do in a car, is sustain that kind of driving, that level of focus for this long, and it depends on how you set yourself up. For someone like Thomas Herb, who chose to be very patient this race, he's put out a lot less mental effort because he set himself up for success in that way, versus someone who was on the limit the entire race or recovering from mistakes. You're going to be mentally more drained running a race like that.
Yeah, no question about it. I think the guy who'll be most strained is Pintaric.
Yeah.
With those offs, then that, you know, when he dialed it up, figured it out, and was coming, and then just pushed that little bit too late on the brakes going into turn 1 and got it buried. Here comes Hinkle and that Dodge Challenger SRT. Good-looking cars, aren't they?
It is beautiful, especially with the kind of tweaked proportions of the GT-1 body. A little lower front end, a little bit wider overall. It looks really awesome.
It's a good-looking hot rod.
Yeah.
What it should be. You know, one of those throwback muscle cars, and they nailed that one. But the guy who nailed this race down beautifully, Tom Herb, in the Mercedes-Benz AMG GT3 fielded by Fall Line Motorsports. And I'm trying to look. Looks like the official margin of victory was approaching 2 minutes. Not a bad day in the office here.
Yeah, up until that off for Pintaric, it was 59 seconds, but
Yeah.
then almost 2 minutes.
All right, there it is, the gold medal around the neck. That means we're going to throw it down to Hayward Wagner.
Thomas getting out. Thomas going to stay in the car. We're just got a couple of quick questions, boy. You have got some good weather juju going, don't you, my friend?
Yeah, I must have an Indian in my closet or a voodoo doll somewhere.
So when we were on grid, we were looking at this car compared to some of the other cars on grid, looking at the wipers, the defrost, the side windows, all those things. How stressful was this drive for you?
You know, it's the first time I've driven this car in the rain, so it was a little stressful, but the car is really good. I mean, the guys really set it up great today, and with the Yokohama rain tires, they just stuck like glue. And I just needed to just wait my chance and drive a smooth race and hope that we could get through the first couple turns and then game on.
And of course, you sent the team boss out in the first race to do some scouting for you. What was Mark's advice coming into this?
Don't mess up.
You definitely achieved that goal. Congratulations. 2 national championships in a row. Bit unorthodox, but very well done, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, just phenomenal drive. And again, I mean, you know, he just happened to have the right car, you know, for these conditions. But you can still have the right car and throw it off the track, and he didn't do that. And I mean, look at the margin of victory in the end. I mean, that's just dominance.
Yeah, spectacular. And again, as someone who loves driving in the rain, I want to know whatever his rain dance is, I'm going to need to learn it.
Exactly.
Because he's consistently just been so good in the wet, and 2 years in a row has gotten those conditions to bring home another win.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Pintaric will still get credited with 4th. Stephen Wiles up into that 5th spot in that Cadillac, and then Lewis, Romito, and Grant all not bringing it home to the finish. But for Thomas Herb, he just was an absolutely dialed in to the track, to that car today, and just an absolutely stellar run to be sure. But I'll tell you, I think really impressive run by Ryan McManus. And when you point out how far off he was in the dry, that may be the very definition of rain being the great equalizer, because, you know, the rain is about skill, less so than horsepower. And as you can see on a wet track, visibility is tough enough. Look what he was driving through on that as well. I mean, that is a challenging day in the office.
Yeah, that's a generous, barely a porthole on a submarine as well as he's dealing with there. And the visibility just in that, you saw Thomas Herb could see everything. Ryan McManus was clearly looking through basically just that little window through the haze there, and that's so hard.
And now Thomas Herb, in that very comfortable car, is going to go out and take himself a nice victory lap, to be sure, and going to enjoy this moment as he gets his 2nd consecutive gold medal in the class, GT-1 and SCCA's National Championship Runoff. And you can see him flashing the lights there. That's usually the salute for a car that's buttoned up like that to all of the corner workers. And with that, let's get out of Hayward and hear from our other medalists.
Ryan, you did not have the pace in qualifying. You found something in the wet. Tell me about this drive.
We found nothing in the wet. The car is prepared wonderfully, so the defroster worked. I could see the entire time, and all it was, for me, it was just if I kept it on the track and I didn't spin, I didn't care about anything else other than keeping a gap to Jeff and then Dave when he went off. But really, credit is in the prep of the car, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And
so I got to ask you, as an amateur carpenter, that looks like a chunk of PVC pipe with holes drilled in it that's venting air to the windshield. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, and it comes from the transmission tube and just blows hot air from the tranny and the engine straight up in there. And yeah, I could see the entire time. It was pretty treacherous.
So one of the most sophisticated classes here at the Runoffs, running PVC pipe defrost. Congratulations to you on the 2nd. Let's get our 3rd place finisher here, pulling the head and neck off. You did a little farming off of turn 1. Tell me about that.
I got a little crazy. We were just trying to make up some time on the guys in front of us, and because we could still see them, and just went too deep into turn 1. And luckily, we had no damage, so we were able to get back on and keep going. And
what's it like trying to drive one of these cars in these conditions?
It's just out of control. Yeah, you just can't put any power down, because as soon as you get anywhere close to being in the power band, so you end up 1 or 2 gears up, keeping it below 6,000, and just trying to putt it around the course. You know, and if you do try to run it too hard, you're going off and you're not finishing.
Well, congratulations to you. A Runoffs podium, always an accomplishment.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, Hayward's right. Always an accomplishment, and particularly in these conditions, in this type of a car, to make it to the podium is saying something. Here's the start. Pintaric on the pole there. Lewis up and around the outside, and Pintaric just hit a puddle. Around he went.
Yeah, you and I weren't even prepared for how intense that actually was. The fact that he got away with that one, or with all those cars around, is something to be said, let alone the rest. But now the field kind of learning those conditions. Pintaric, his second strike, goes for a little bit of a ride, bonks it off the wall, but actually is able to continue on as now we have a challenge for the lead. Lewis, his first little slip up.
Yep, just dropped that left front as Thomas Herb in the GT3 car with the aero and the driver aids coming up behind Lewis. And he was absolutely relentless. And right here, he just got a better drive out of the turn. And Lewis has the power, but he couldn't put it down, and Herb just dropped the hand.
And this was the first hint that we got that it was falling apart just a little for Lewis. We learned later it was due to visibility. He was having some issues. There you can see, we can't even see the driver in that car. You couldn't see where he was going either. Ends up retiring that car. Now Pintaric on that fantastic charge. Made it back up onto the podium, but only for a little bit.
Yep, there he gets around Hinkle. Now he's closing on Ryan McManus, knifes through on McManus, and takes away that second spot. But the problem was, guess where?
Same spot we saw pretty much everybody else make this a very similar mistake and ended the race right there in the mud.
Yep, got it augured in right there. And at that point, Thomas Herb ended up getting the win by 1 minute and 47 seconds at absolute dominance over McManus and Jeff Hinkle. So, fascinating race to be sure, and for Herb, able to get a second straight gold medal here at the 59th running of the SCCA National Championship Runoffs. Thanks so much for joining us. Up next, it's going to be E-Production. I am Greg Creamer, Tom O'Gorman alongside Haywood Wagner down in the pit lane, all doing an absolutely great job. Thanks so much for joining us here. We look forward to having you back as the 59th running of the SCCA National Championship Runoffs continues.
Why race? Because it's in our blood. A love of driving that pushes us as hard on the road as it does on the track. It's why we reinvented the Roadster and put a piece of it into every car we make. It's why we refine, rethink, and refine again. And it's why we'll always engineer to your heart's BPM, not simply an engine's RPM. Why race? Why indeed?